Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. The JAMODI podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. I think sometimes when coaches take over a program, not all the time, but quite often, it's in a bad place. What was something different about, implementing your system, your culture in a program that has had a high level of success the last 2 decades?
Yeah. I think it's actually more difficult, if I'm being totally honest. I think even when I took over the Dream, they had hadn't made the playoffs the year before. And so players are hungry. They're ready for change. They, what was they did before maybe didn't work. And so, open to new and different. And I think the biggest challenge of taking over a program that's won at the highest level. Yeah. I mean, at the highest level, in 3 national championships. And I think it was the weight of expectations. And I think that the challenge, look, I think personality wise, I get along with kids. I think I connected to the roster pretty quickly. I think they trusted in my knowledge of the game and treated them well as people. My biggest fear from the beginning was, hey, they like what we're doing. They like the idea. Melissa Smith likes the idea of getting to play in space more, and not being, pigeonholed as much on the low block. And Queen likes getting the ball in different areas of the court. So they liked the idea of what we were doing, but it was about what's going to happen when we're not successful doing it, and I think that was, I knew that going in. I knew they were going to be excited about it, but what happens, when adversity hits? Yeah. And boy, we got it, we got it hard. And, I think there were a lot of questions like, okay, well, she can't win the big game. We lost a close one to Michigan and in overtime. And, we won some games by 30 that people thought we should win by 60. And, but I always felt like we were going to be playing our best basketball late in the season, that if they, as cliche as it sounds, if they trusted the process, that they would begin to understand when to slip the screen versus when to stick and hold, that they would understand, how people were defending them and how to read the hedge and, all the little intricacies of truly playing pick and roll basketball and when to pick and pop and how to create in space. And you saw growth in Sarah Andrews in terms of not playing at all as a freshman and then really, being a key cog for us. And so, we went through the adversity, the 2 losses in a row to start conference. But I don't think we ever lost faith in one another. I think that, we can honestly make a lot of excuses for those games. I think we could have won both of those games. They were both close games. I also think we played against Kansas State with 7 players who tested positive for COVID the day after we played. We played with a roster.
It affects them, no doubt.
Of sick kids. And then our first game coming out of COVID, when we had been off for 5 days and then had a return to play protocol with 30-minute and then an hour. Like we had 1 full practice before we played them, and we were playing against a team that was top 5 in the country in pace. And so, but that was the adversity. And I think that adversity brought us closer together. And I think they like the freedom of the system. I think they like being able to come in my office and, have questions and be able to, whether it was about, I think I need more touches. Okay, let's talk about it. Are you really not getting enough? Where are you getting them? I'm not going to agree with them all the time.
Right.
I always say sometimes it's about, I'm going to back it up with the statistics and the analytics but
sometimes they also just need to say it. They need to get it off
Yes.
their chest. They need us to listen to them, which I think, as you alluded to earlier, that's maybe a difference now between our job than those that coached us, is we need to listen to them a little bit.
Yeah. And I said, like, have you ever had these conversations before? And the answer was always no. Like, I haven't had these conversations before. Okay, well, let's, understand where I'm coming from. I'm going to let you talk, and then you're going to listen, and I'm going to explain, like, why we're in the situation we're in, and we'll try to get, like, I believe in problem solving. Like, I got a degree in engineering, and so from a thinking person's perspective, it's what are the assumptions, like what are, what equations am I using, and how am I going to get to an answer? And so, it's like, I'm going to listen to you, and then I'm going to talk, and then we're going to get some takeaways from this that can help us going forward, whether it's communication style, whether it's, how can I help you? But not help you if it doesn't help the team, and really getting them to understand the priority will be team. But I think individually you can have success, in a collective environment. And so, I think that was really a big part of it with this group, was letting them have a voice, and then still being able to say, it's great that you said all that, but it doesn't mean you're going to walk all over me just because I allow you to communicate with me. Like, at the end of the day, I know more about, I've forgotten more about basketball than you know. Now, at some point that won't be the case, but like, this is the one thing that I feel like I know as well as anybody. I always said I had kids. I got 3 kids. I just hope that I didn't screw them up too bad. But basketball, like, this is the thing I've studied since I was like, 11 years old, like, and I watch European basketball and professional, like, I watch the NBA and the WNBA, and I study it, and I listen to podcasts, and I, like, this is my passion. And so, I'm going to try to help you achieve what you want, but, we're going to prioritize team.
I love what you said about how the style of play that you're talking about, it sounds really good. Like, I love running and gunning, playing in space and shooting the three, using the 3-point line as a weapon. But coaches, sometimes they will watch you play, they'll watch us play, and they'll think, golly, I really would love to do that. Players would love to do that, but they don't really know how hard it is. And you nailed it. When not if it comes, when it comes, when the other team is guarding you in a way that affects your motion, or shots just aren't falling. When that adversity comes, I believe it's your relationships that you have with your players is what allowed you to weather those storms and be better from it.
Well, I think they, I had told them, like, obviously, when Coach Mulkey left, like, that our opponents were going to see me as the first chink in the armor, like, this was, they've won 11 championships in a row, and Baylor's the gold standard in this league. And, but maybe the fortress is falling, and so, we had to kind of prove that wasn't the case. And it isn't that, personally, like, I get a lot of things wrong. Like, I may have the wrong player in the game. I can call a better play coming out of a timeout. Like, I am not going to be perfect. But I'm going to work to be a little bit more perfect, the next time out. And I'm going to keep working, to figure out each of the players and where they need the ball and when they need the ball. And so it's never about being perfect, but it's also about, like, one of my key things as a head coach is that I will never let any of my players take the blame. Like, there's a reason I get paid. And it's to have them ready. And certainly there are games that shots aren't falling and I can't make shots for them. But, do I do a good enough job of helping them get stops to get a turnover, to get an easy one? Do I do a good enough job of, finding little ways to get them easy baskets, to get them going, even when their shots aren't falling? And so I think when you have trust that the person that's leading you, isn't going to throw you under the bus, I think that goes a long way. I don't think anyone wants to be embarrassed ever. I think it's uncomfortable for people. And I realized that these guys are 18 to 22 years old, and I am the adult in the room. And so, I may feel like I called a perfect game, but I probably didn't. And when I watch film, I'm going to have missed 14 opportunities to do something better. Or maybe I sped them up when I should have slowed them down, or, like I went away from horns and horns was working for us. Like, why did I do that? Why didn't we switch up our pick and roll coverage? And ask those questions like, gosh, we really should have trapped that person and created something. And so, I think that's the key in relationship building, like that they trust you, that they knew I had their back. And I think because of that, they so badly wanted to have mine, and I think in those moments you have kind of a special situation. And as much as, I would try to explain this season to people, and I really, really struggled a lot of the year to kind of talk about the pressure, the expectation, and how people were like, ready to fire me in January. And I'm not saying that many people were. In fact, my defense mechanism is sarcasm. And so I'd even said in a press conference, after we beat Iowa State, and they're like, what would you say to everyone? I'm like, okay, there's probably a few less hashtag fire Nicki Collens out there. And I don't look at that stuff. I was just kind of saying it sarcastically. And then people were upset with me for that was never out there, and, this and that. But, I had to shut down my DMs for a while in certain areas, because I think there were a lot of people that had voices and had seen this program be, one of the best of the best, and had that expectation. And so, I finally kind of hit on it, I think the best with this year, and said, as much like, I absolutely love the relationships I built and the opportunity I had, and I love Baylor. But like, wins just felt like a sigh of relief. Like when you won, that was the expectation, like it was hard to take a lot of joy from a lot of the wins this year, because it's like, that's what Baylor does. Baylor wins, you have to win, you have to win, you have to win.
But for you and your team, it's new. I mean, it's a new team.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you feel like that's what Baylor does. So you have to do it. So, you have that feeling of, okay, we did it. I'm relieved. And when you lost, so often in coaching, a loss can be the biggest catalyst for success. Like you do learn a lot in losses. They do help you reset. They do help you get your players' attention. Like, I've been telling you, if we don't clean X, Y, and Z up, it's going to burn us. Well, it burned us, and so now you have that attention again, of your team sometimes in a loss, but losses felt like so magnified, that you couldn't kind of view them that way. You just had to figure out, okay, how do we get over this hump? And so, I think the first time I felt like true joy was, when we secured at least a share of the Big 12 championship at Iowa State, and 12,000 people. And we had spent 2 full days of practice with the music on so loud, because we knew it was going to be loud in there, and that we were going to have to use hand signals to communicate. And so every kid on our team knew every action, every play, what the hand signal was, because we hadn't had to use them a lot all season. And to go in there and beat them by 27 and really never have to use a hand signal the entire game, because we were able to keep the crowd quiet, because we controlled tip to, finish that game. I think that was the one time, like, kind of coasting into a championship, that I really, really kind of felt the joy, and that the weight, was kind of lifted. And so, and it's the task. I think, I certainly, people don't succeed in my shoes. I mean, if you look at the history of, the coaches that have followed Hall of Fame coaches, it's really hard. Part of me doesn't know why I felt like I could do it. I just truly felt called to do it. It was, because I think, when you think, and you think with your head and not with your heart, you go, okay, like, how often has a coach been successful walking in behind someone who's built, such a special dynasty, and I knew it would be hard. I just don't think I knew quite how hard. And I think that's just, for some people, I think it would have been hard for anyone. I think for me, I'm a people pleaser. And so struggling with this idea of understanding who my why was, and not getting tied to, I mean, there's a reason I do what I do, and it's not for the people that didn't like me. But at the same time, like, I have no problems admitting that, like, I am a people pleaser. Like, I do want people to like me. I do want to engage. I do, I'm not, my goal is to not necessarily like be better, than Kim or people to like me more. I just, I want to be respected for my mind, but, and my passion, but at the same time, I love people, and I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.